Here's an idea. You might enjoy pop music because you can't get away from it. Okay, before I even start saying the stuff, I want to make one thing exceptionally clear, and that is I love me some pop music. I'm not gonna say that I definitely know all of the words to Katy Perry's Roar, but I got the eye of the tiger, a fighter, I'm dancing through the fire. But objectively, I think we can all agree that there are some songs in the pop music canon that are played with frequency. There is even a sometimes unshakable feeling that Rihanna or Lorde or Mr. Timberlake are following you. At first, maybe you're like, all right, this is a new song, which after a while could become, okay, I get it. But before long, that might evolve into, and we'll never be royals. And it's all over. They got you. You know the words, you're gonna sing along when it's on, and oh hey, look, the single's only 99 cents on iTunes. Perfect. Then it's just a matter of not pulling a Macarena and saturating the universe so completely that even a few notes of it can send people into a boundless rage. Now, the second most impressive thing about this whole arrangement, assuming that the first most impressive thing is the writing of a song that is worthy of such an effort, is the aligning of God knows how many forces to make sure that no matter where you go, you know that you shine bright like diamonds in the sky. Of course, we'd like to believe that the songs we constantly hear are played so often because we, the music-buying public, have decided it should be so. That through record sales and downloads and whatever else, we've all, or at the very least a large and representative group of us, have agreed and decreed, yes, Miley Cyrus everywhere, please. I came in like a but it might not be so simple and turns out to be a kind of chicken and the egg problem that lots of art forms deal with, but which has been exemplified by music. That problem is knowing how much music is worth. Seeing as how it is ubiquitous, arguably the most popular art form, easily acquirable both legally and yet no less impactful culturally, it can become very difficult from a business standpoint to accurately predict which pieces of music are going to be worth the time and money to promote and have produced at world-class studios by people with golden ears. Which incidentally is why pop records are so expensive to make. Golden ears don't come cheap. So, recording industry people, not the ones with the golden ears, but the ones with the very thick Rolodexes, Rolodex, phone contact lists, do some stuff to encourage a kind of market stability, to clearly communicate which recordings have value and what that value is. In short, they work very hard to make a certain selection of music very visible, I guess. Songs are placed in commercials, TV shows, and movies. They're specially selected for playlists played in retail settings. And maybe most meaningfully, they are played on the radio. Now, before you deploy all of your scoffs and are like, who listens to the radio? The answer is like pretty much everybody. According to Nielsen ratings, fully 92% of Americans over the age of 12 regularly listen to the radio. I know, I was shocked too, and I regularly listen to the radio. Nearly a quarter of those people say that they love the radio. So it should be less of a little jagged pill when Mike Masnick of Tech Dirt describes radio as a key, if not the key way to break an act. As such, radio airtime is a valuable commodity. And wouldn't you know, the people in charge just happened to figure that out. The practice of payola, which is a portmanteau of pay and Victrola, a name of early phonographs, is one where record companies pay broadcasters to play their songs on the air. And weirdly, though promotional consideration in television and movies, paid product placement in music videos, and tons of other like stuff is not only expected but usually considered necessary, payola is illegal. Massive label X can't pay huge radio station Z to play the new single by band who's gonna make it big, Y, which is incidentally also the name of my new banjo-infused noise rock group that's gonna make it big. Y. However, and of course, there are tons of ways around these payola laws, some of them involving implicit understandings brokered around trips to exotic locations, and tons of other crazy interesting stuff we just don't have time to get into. Further reading in the description if you're interested. So payola effectively happens anyway, and given the surprising influence of radio, this gives rise to a, quote, commodification in tastemaking. Put another way, in a paper from Media, Culture, and Society, Charles Fairchild cites research which notes the more difficult it is to define the economic value of a product, the greater power that rests in the hands of those who act as intermediaries for that product to influence the perception of its value. So, through the, quote, targeted deployment of music, both on the radio and in public spaces, meaning and therefore value is created within that music. Which makes sense, right? Like, if you've never heard a song and have no positive associations with it, you might not think of it as having meaning. But if it's totally your jam because it's on every time you're out with your pals, That's pretty meaningful. And there are, I think, two ways to look at the situation that arises as a result of all this. The first is to cynically cast this whole thing as a kind of media-related Stockholm syndrome. Stockholm syndrome is a symptom of victimization where a hostage or prisoner might start to feel positively towards and even defend their captor. Clearly, it's hugely irresponsible to draw a total equivalency between people stuck in violent or dangerous situations and feeling like, God, that Robin Thicke song is just everywhere. It is, however, an unfortunately useful shortcut to evoke a perceived imbalance of power. I cannot escape this song. And the eventual, maybe somewhat guilt-laden change of heart. You know, that Gautier song actually is pretty good. It's the process we've probably all experienced at least once of learning to love a pop song because we kind of feel like we have to, which might come before never wanting to hear it again for as long as you live, so help you Pete. You could also say that this is just how pop music works. If you consider popular music as capable of having meaning in the first place, maybe one of the ways it gains that meaning is how it's used and where it's played, seeing as how it is, by definition, popular. Context and prevalence are part of the equation. Maybe even more so than sound itself, because like Drake and Mumford & Sons are both equally pop music. Maybe Get Lucky gains just as much meaning from its content and the personal space it creates in your headphones or your car as it does from being played in other contexts, like in the club, at the grocery store, on TV, at the mall, or in the hundreds of covers on YouTube. And the people working to make sure that happens are simply pushing the best, most promising songs. Though, why they decided on My Humps at one point is a little beyond me. I'm sure they had a great reason though. What do you guys think? What are the ways that pop music gains meaning? Let us know in the comments, and since I know you're gonna ask, it's a Dan Deacon shirt. Please subscribe. So, new Google Plus integrated commenting system. It's gonna be a little while until we get our sea legs. Let's see what you guys had to say about Ender's Game. So first and foremost, an apology. In last week's episode, we showed a picture of a bunch of white gentlemen in a demotivator that was captioned fascism. What we didn't realize is that that photo was of the General Council of the Church of Latter-day Saints, and we therefore implied that we thought Mormons were fascist. That was absolutely the last thing that we intended on doing. We just simply did not know that that picture was of the General Council, and that is no excuse. We should not be putting things up on the show. We should not be using assets if we do not know what they depict, but I want to apologize to all of our Mormon subscribers and anyone who was offended. I'm really sorry. We're gonna just try to be better at that, and I hope you'll forgive us. T-Former Custom Spy says that the problem with getting hung up in a piece of art's politics is that it stops you from having that authentic aesthetic experience of experiencing the thing as itself, as the work of art, which, yeah, totally. I mean, and I think that is the problem that a lot of people had, that they wanted to enjoy Ender's Game as a film, but just got stopped dead in their tracks. John85 says that if we have to take into account the political stance of the people making everything we consume, then we will eventually be naked, hungry, and not entertained at all. And yeah, I mean, I think you can't be expected to know everything about everything, though there are certainly some people who think that that state of being is preferential. It gets complicated when people feel as though a decision that they're making or a thing that they're supporting is actually going to affect a structure of power in some way, or is going to sufficiently comment on that structure of power. And that is the question with Ender's Game. It is a very visible movie made by a very visible man with very well-known politics. And so the combination of its visibility and politics makes some people uncomfortable about supporting it. To Thomas Humphrey, I honestly don't know whether or not it is possible to not bring politics into things. I think that, yeah, it would be a very difficult thing to make, especially as far as media is concerned, an apolitical piece of media. To Starius 2, it's fine. This is a very common mistake. It happens all the time. You'd be surprised, actually. PewDiePie is 4 doors down and to the left. Veronica Bourgeois said that the most important thing to her was not Orson Scott Card's politics, but how the movie was gonna be, and says that basically anybody can make the statement that they want by choosing or not choosing to go see the movie, but that it is unfair when someone is made to feel like a bad person for making either of those decisions. Agree. Furthermore, Rocket Possum, who has an awesome name, said that Orson Scott Card could have insulted her directly, and she would still go see Ender's Game. That's dedication. Whoa, 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 Brian Downs. I just want to be totally clear that we're not advocating any stomping out of anyone's opinions, rather just saying that however you orient yourself towards seeing Ender's Game or not seeing Ender's Game, the reason that you have is important, period. Andrea Elise writes a really thoughtful comment about the complexity of the decision to go see Ender's Game if you have been the victim of homophobia, and goes on to say that it might not be about money, but it might be about not wanting to contribute to Card's cultural relevancy, to keep him in the spotlight, which is, yeah, that's totally valid. Michael McGee says that as someone who is somewhat conservative, if he were to only consume media that expresses his political viewpoints, especially in the sci-fi genre, there wouldn't be too much for him to read or watch, and says that he will respectfully ignore the political stance of creators if people who disagree with him respectfully ignore him. That's one way to do it. Aaron Moore points us towards a really thoughtful blog post by Neil Gaiman who tackles this very issue. It's super great. We'll put a link in the description. Jack Connell said that Card's politics influenced him heavily in his decision to go see Ender's Game, but in kind of the opposite way that we've been talking about, and that after he learned that Card is conservative, that made him more interested in seeing the film, which, yeah, fair enough. This week's episode was brought to you by the hard work of these diamonds in the sky. We have an IRC and a subreddit, links in the description. And the tweet of the week comes from Duncan McClory, who points us towards the TARDIS Eruditorum, which is a critical history of Doctor Who. In preparation for our episode next week about the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who, we recommend that you read all of it. Better get started.